Since I do not know Harrison Holtkamp very well, I would like to get to know him more. I polled some of you about who this man was, who this man is. And some of you said, this is a man of second chances. A man who has a heart and passion for what he does. And Harrison is the director of the, for heaven's sakes, yes, the Interfaith Community Paths. And I'm anxious to know what he means. But I also understand that he is a great barbecuer. So perhaps we should get his talents up there. So I'd like you to give us a round of applause for Harrison.
Guys, thanks so much for having me. I'm not sure if I don't think I need a microphone. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
All right. My name is Harrison Holtkamp. I'm the director of Interfaith Community Paths, and please, everyone call me Harry. It's just easier. It's less syllables.
You might need to use the microphone only because the air conditioning is on so loud.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's turned on.
Is it on?
I'll get it.
We may have to play around with buttons. That might be the one. Power? Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the greatest microphone, but it'll do something for us, just because the air conditioning is on.
This way. Here we go.
You know, I'm.
Can you hear me now?
Congregation.
All right, so I'm the director of Interfaith Community Paths. We run emergency-only shelters, and we're the only emergency shelter in all of LaPorte County, the second largest county in the state of Indiana. And First Presbyterian is so vital, and I'm not saying that because I'm here. I truthfully am not. Because I'm sure there are many people in this room who know Dorothy Miller and Nancy Bracken.
Oh, yeah.
And without them, this would be nothing. Nothing. Trust me on this. It really started something very special. It was hard for everyone to get on board with it. And churches came in and churches came out, but basically it was an emergency shelter, wintertime only, that it was established in empty spaces. What it wasn't called back then was PADS. It was called the Overnight Emergency Shelter. After a while, they started calling it Interfaith Emergency Shelter. We were a PADS program. They modeled us after a PADS program. PADS stands for Public Action to Deliver Shelter. And it's not something that is a franchise. Definitely not. It could be, but it's not a franchise. But it is modeled, and it is run throughout the United States. There are PADS programs everywhere. And basically, it doesn't have to be in the basement of churches, but churches get used less, so they have more spaces that are available for those overnight periods. So it worked out, but it could be any available space. But Dorothy and Nancy recognized what was going on in the city and recognized that something had to be done. So they did all the hard work, they did the research, they did all the legwork, and they got us up and running. And I have all of their notes. I have all of their notes. And it talks about their first night. They were ready to go, and nobody showed up. Remember that. We're going to come back to that. It was probably the third night that people started showing up. And it was probably 3 people on the first night, and it grew and grew. And after the first year, after the end of the first 6 months, their notes said, we need to invest in more pads because one night we had 10 people, and that was all the pads that we had. So, they reinvested in themselves, but they operated on a shoestring budget, and it worked. Food was donated by individuals. Perfect. Didn't cost them anything. The churches held all the responsibility to us. All the overhead was the churches, and they were gracious to do it. But they paid our electricity. They paid our insurance because we were not an organization. We were a grassroots group of people who did volunteer work. So they paid the insurance. They paid everything, all the heating and air, all of this. All of this was thankful to the churches, and there were multiple churches coming in. But this program operated for about 16 years with that model. And Dorothy and Nancy stepped out probably about 2005 or so. And this is 2001 that they started the program.
Harry, you really need to.
So sorry.
Up the volume.
So it was 2001 that they started the program, and it was about 2005 that Dorothy and Nancy stepped out. Okay, So at that point, someone in the program, I believe Ed Marion, took over, and he ran it again up until 2016 with the same model. And it worked. There were some hiccups, there were some churches that fell out and came back in and all of this and that, but it worked. But the numbers started to grow and grow and grow, which meant that it cost more and more on a nightly basis outside of all the overhead that the churches had to take care of this. In 2016, they asked me, I've been volunteering at St. Paul's. I started, then I went over to River of Life, and then I went over to Sacred Heart, and I've been volunteering throughout the program the whole time, taking on more and more responsibilities as we went on. And they asked me in 16 to take over as executive director, and I already had a full-time day job. And I had a wife. And I didn't let either of them know that I was going to take this over also. Because I'm smart. But in my heart, I knew it had to go on. I knew this program had to continue. And it wasn't about me. It was just about hanging on to the reins of this and making sure that it was viable to the community, because I've seen how valuable it was and what it really did for people. And organizations like Keys to Hope have been wonderful. Organizations like Swanson Center, just amazing. Anywhere that wants to give us some case management, some case workers, some social workers, people who offer therapy and such, will take that, because this is what it takes. Each person is an individual, and just think of like how many times it takes to stop quitting smoking. You know, it takes them multiple times. I remember my wife telling me to stop eating cheeseburgers, and we're going to get to that after a while. Right now, we're not going to talk about that. But sometimes it takes time for time, and it takes another person or another person. And this is why you need a huge arsenal behind you of available resources. I think that's what we do the best. I think we connect to other resources. We if you break us down, we offer food and shelter. Kind of basic. But we also connect them to the resources to help them get over this. And we're connected very tightly with these resources. We make sure that every client who walks through our door gets connected with the resource. They can't continue in our program without being connected to a resource. Because at that point, we're their flop house, and we're not doing anything but housing them. And I know that works, because some people just need that, and they need a little more time. But truthfully, we're going to get them connected to the right person. They have to believe in us. And sometimes that's the hard part. There's the whole belief part. But we'll get that taken care of. And it's a work in progress. So when they say I'm a person who gives chances, trust me, they'll fall out. They'll come back. They'll fall out. They'll come back. And we'll let that happen. I've got many people who've gone through my program that's been there 9, 10 times. It happens. It happens. And one of those times we're going to get it right, and they're going to get it right. And it's going to work. So in 2016, when they asked me to become director, I never told my wife, and I said yes. I decided that we had to become a 501c3. We had to be an organization. So we organized ourselves. The first step is to become a business with the state of Indiana. The second step is to become a non-for-profit with the federal government. We did that. Everything was wonderful. And then we started thinking about all the things that all the volunteers over the years wanted to do with the program, but never had the chance, and we were able to do it. It just wasn't viable. And the biggest one was, we didn't have a women's shelter. There was no emergency women's shelter. There is a women's shelter in town, and it's wonderful, because they have 8 beds. The wonderful part is, I'm homeless right now, and I'm on a waiting list. That's why we need to have a women's program, not because we want to duplicate services, because there's a disconnect in the services. So they should be pulling from us, and most of the time they do. So there's an opportunity for our clients to go into Sandcastle Shelter. It's also an opportunity for clients who step in our door who don't understand that they're actually dealing with domestic violence to get fast-tracked into the domestic violence shelter. Again, connecting services. It's not about staying with us, it's about getting to the right spot to take care of your situations. This is what we do. So that women's program, when it was started in 17, it traveled from church to church, just like the men's did. So every night, we went from one church to 2 churches. We went from 1 refrigerator with donations to 2 refrigerators with donations that we had to take our stuff out of and go to the next church, and then go to the next church. And the logistical nightmare was crazy. That was on my back. I had to take care of it. I'm the one who started it. I had volunteers. I didn't have staff like that. I still am struggling with staff. Kind of is what it is. So our women's program was up and running. The next thing that was on our list was, let's get our own facility. So a local church gave us a facility. Awesome. The city said no. The local church gave us a second facility with an acre of land to put that down in about 4 months. And at that point, I started sitting in on all the meetings that the church had with all of their people. I started listening to what was going on, started talking to everybody behind the scenes to see what could be done. It was heart-wrenching, truthfully. I've never seen a church close. I've seen churches dissolve, but not close with constituents in it. That was terrible. Truthfully, these people put their heart and souls. They grew up in this church, and it closed. And again, I understand. When the rites of sacrament are not being renewed, no children being born in, no baptisms, no marriages, no confirmations. I mean, there's no progression to see what's going to happen. So you have to cut ties at a certain point. And this is what happened. We're going to get past that. So the day that the church closed was Easter 2018. The next day, my team, 2 lawyers, Vice President of Franciscan, myself, we went over to the Diocese of Gary, and we petitioned to get the church into our hands. And at first they said it's going to cost you this much, and then we came back with how much is it going to cost you to demolish it. And we went back and forth and back and forth, and finally they said you can have it as soon as you get it zoned. So it took us a while to get all of our ducks in a row at that point. So we knew it was in our hands. We had the keys in our hands. But in September, we were able to petition the city, and it was kind of contentious. I know some of you guys were there.
I was going to say, some of these members that are sitting right here were
Absolutely,
there that night.
and I appreciate that, truthfully. And you can see how contentious it got with the city. We didn't announce it to anybody. It was just one of those things that just kind of spread. It was a packed house and a lot of people yelling and yelling and yelling. And all I was doing was pouring my heart out, saying, "Listen, if this is needed, we will do anything you want. Just give us a chance. This is going to really lessen." But some people in the city couldn't get it past their heads that we're already in all these churches, and now we're going to be in another one. We're just creating more shelters. No, we weren't. We were lessening our costs. We were lessening all of our overhead. We were staying in one spot that had a bus stop, that had 2 floors, that had locked doors between each one, that was extremely secure, ready to go. We slid by and got in. It was a tough one, but we slid by on one boat and got in. And the city didn't like that, but it was passed. So at that point, we started raising funds, and we needed $400,000 to get everything up and running. And we raised that $400,000 in 4 months.
Wow.
And then we went 88% over our budget. For things like, well, we never thought about putting a new floor in. We never thought about putting the washers and dryers in, putting a walk-in freezer, or a dumbwaiter. Think about carrying hot food up 2 flights of stairs every single night, multiple pans. One slip and fall would have paid for that dumbwaiter real easy. So we put all these things in, and it's made it wonderful, truthfully. The laundry gets used almost every single day by clients and by staff. The walk-in freezer is full, 10 by 10, 100 square feet of all donated food, ready to go. Anything happens, we've got enough to last us for a few weeks. Our dumbwaiter gets used multiple times for multiple things, not just food. It's just a wonderful thing, and we made it work. So we moved in August of 2020, and we've been there ever since. So in that time, our first year in, because we've been in it for 2 years now, our first year in, we were able to help 180 guests stay the night. We had about 1,700 meals that were served, about 8,500 bed nights, and we helped 81 guests get into housing. And in our second year, we had 190 guests. And we were, again, about 18,000 meals, about 9,000 bed nights. And a bed night is 1 bed, 1 person, 1 night. So 9,000. And we were able to help 82 people get into housing. So I think that we're doing the right job. We're at about 44% right now with our numbers as far as people coming in to getting housed. I'd like to see that in the 50% range, but I think all of us would like to see the most perfect thing out there. But we're accomplishing things that weren't accomplished before, and we're really helping people who just needed the help before it had nowhere to turn. So our next thing that we started doing, and we started this year, was our Phase 2 project. And we actually started it last year. At the end of last year, we approached Ton and Blank after a tour of Franciscan toured our facility, and Franciscan is owned by Ton and Blank is owned by Franciscan. The vice president and president of Franciscan said, "Hey, why don't you put in an application for that Phase 2 to Ton and Blank and run it across our desk too, and we'll see what we can do." So it came in at about $30,125. Ton and Blank gave us a $5,000 discount, so now we're at $25,000. Great, and I told them I'm gonna write a grant for this, and we're gonna see what we can do. So I wrote a grant. The grant got granted to us in June, and Ton and Blank came back and says, okay, we're gonna reassess the whole project. Okay, so they came back and reassessed the whole project, and now it's $72,000 plus. So our $25,000 we were trying to raise to match Healthcare Foundation, because we went to Healthcare Foundation for this reason. They've been a grantor of us for a while, and they understand what we do in the community. And the reality is, with the overhead that we have, we're operating hand to mouth right now. We're very grant reliant, and we're working on more fundraising, but in the time of COVID, fundraising can be a little sketchy, a little pieced in and such. So we went to them and said, hey, listen, we need to build some money in the coffers in case our furnace breaks down or something like that. But we also want to get phase 2 done, and phase 2 is all the windows and the doors on the second floor, the men's floor, where all the stained glass windows were, and the church took the stained glass out and left the plexiglass behind it, and that's what we're operating with. It works. It's very rudimentary. I always say my shelter is the best and the worst in the same breath. And it's the best because it's sure better than the streets. And it's the worst is because I don't want it to be home. I don't want it to be home. I want it to be a short stop and to move on. But I also want the client fixed. So sometimes those stops can be a little bit longer, and I understand that. But what we're seeing is, we're seeing a lot of heat loss. We're seeing a lot of NIPSCO bills up to here. You know, and these are things that we need to take care of. So the bill came in at 75. We asked Healthcare Foundation for 25, and we were hoping for 50 from them, and they said, how about a 25 with a match from the community? Whatever the community gives you, we'll match it up to $25,000, and the thought is, we'll talk about the windows, it'll go towards the windows, and the grant will come in, and it'll go towards our coffers, and we'll start building some reserve for us. And now all of it has to go towards the windows, because we really have to get that done, and we're still behind on the whole project. So we were able to order the front doors, because if we have to piece it out and it's going to cost us more because we're doing multiple projects instead of one project, it is what it is. The goal is to get the project finished. So we already ordered the front doors. That project should be starting here in the next couple weeks. And we're still raising funds for our phase 2 project of replacing those windows. Now these are 10 feet tall by 5 feet wide. There's 8 of them in the building. And there's 8 other small windows, probably about as big as the front door there. So this is the project that we're doing. This is what we're raising funds for right now. But truthfully, all of our money goes towards helping clients out. If you want to look us up online, we've got an A+ rating, a gold star rating also, because we use our funds correctly. It's not for staff and things like that. We rely on volunteers. We probably average about 300 hours a month of volunteer service in our shelters. That's a month. And I'm pushing to get that up to 400 hours a month, because I think there's enough meat on the bone for people to help us out. And it might not be serving clients, it might not be working in the kitchen, it might be working in the office, or things like that. There are opportunities out there. So if you guys are interested in anything like that, please come and talk to me. If you're interested in helping us out with raising funds or donating funds or anything like that, I have flyers that look just like this. I can pass them out to you. There's a little quick QR code you can scan with your phone, or like me, write a check and send it into the mail. That's totally fine too. Drop it off at the shelter, that's fine also. But I appreciate the time to have me come out and just tell you exactly what we're doing and the awareness in the community. But I also want to open up to questions, because I know sometimes there are questions, and I want to put everyone at ease. So are there any questions?
Are you able to offer people educational opportunities such as, finding a job?
So we
doing things like
work
that?
with other organizations that offer those things, and there are quite a few organizations that offer training, that offer resume building. I can think of Grace Learning Center offers it, Work One offers it, Ivy Tech offers it. There are lots of agencies and organizations that do that, and we do connect them to that if that's the direction they want to go in. Sometimes getting that job requires them to have a certain math skill, requires them to have a certain, just an education level. So we really help with that if and when needed. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
I am going into senior living, and I'm in the process of disposing of my household goods. Do you accept, things to help people?
A single bed, but I will connect you to somebody, to an organization that does take that. We have very little storage space in the shelter, so every single inch is used and then some. It's kind of a small church.
I have clothing, I have furniture, I have kitchenware.
I'm gonna get you one phone number that will take care of all of that.
Good.
All of it, okay? Clothing and all. Yes, ma'am.
How's the food service?
So our food service is great. Everything is created on one floor in our basement. We have a commercial kitchen very similar to what you guys have here, maybe a little bit smaller. And the women get served first. Food goes in the dumbwaiter upstairs. Men get served the rest of the food. Dishes get sent back down. All the washing is done in the kitchen. Guests get chosen to come down and wash dishes for us and stuff like that. Again, just one hand helping another.
Is it mostly volunteer?
So we have paid staff. I have paid staff from 11 o'clock at night till 7 o'clock in the morning because those are really hard shifts to fill. And then I have paid staff that comes in and fills voids when volunteers are on vacation or taking a break or it's summertime. You can see the numbers in churches in the summertime. It's the same way in the shelters during the summertime. Just lower numbers with volunteers and people attending and such. So I have some paid staff during the evening shifts, but most of it is for overnight. Yes, ma'am.
Sherry and I were talking about your Amazon wish list. You might share that information with the group.
So if you go to our website, on that website you're going to see our needs list. And you've seen this needs list for years and years and years. And I always say it's all the things you have in your pantry that you want to get rid of. So we've got styrofoam cups, we've got paper plates, we've got plastic cutlery, we've got foil, film, all this other stuff. It's all on our needs list. But also on there is our Amazon wish list, which I need to update first thing tomorrow morning. But our Amazon wish list is kind of like a bridal registry. I go in and I pick what we need for the shelter and then send that out. And when people get that, they can purchase and it gets automatically sent to the shelter. All you have to do is click at home and pay for it, of course. And then it gets sent to the shelter. It makes it very simple and painless. And Sherry's been awesome at that. She's been very, very good at that. She'll probably tell you, I need to.
Amazon, when you shop on Amazon, you can pick where a portion of your purchase goes to. I mean, it's pennies on the dollar, but
Yep.
you can pick.
So
As I believe.
we have that also. It's called an angel list. So multiple organizations will sign up for an angel list through Amazon. And again, pennies on the dollar. I don't even think it's 1 penny, but pennies on the dollar go into that. And then at the end of each quarter, we get $20, $40 from that. So hey, every little bit counts, you know? Absolutely. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I had this epiphanal moment
I
while we were
love it.
sitting here, which you've probably already done.
I doubt
But
it.
since we are the only LaPorte County, we're the only organization in LaPorte County, have you approached LaPorte, Union Mills,
I
their
have.
churches and so forth
So
to
the
support
churches
us?
especially, I absolutely have.
I thought you might have, but I don't know.
But there's so many churches, and it's hard for them to fully grasp and understand, especially in the rural areas, what goes on because it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. You know, when they see someone homeless, they give them the $20 when they come to the church. They go do what they want to do, and they don't come back and bother them for a little bit. And then there's not too many others that happens like that. So when you guys see people that come to your church and say, we're low on funds, can you help us out? Our car broke down and all this other stuff. Every church sees that. Every single church. It is not specific to one church. It's every church. So I've approached lots of churches about that. I've been to pastoral meetings and such. They have them, LaPorte County Pastors Meeting. I'm not going to talk to you while you're eating, but when you're done eating, what's the name of the Pastoral Alliance? Is that it? LaPorte County Pastoral Alliance, something like that. So it's a group of pastors that come together, and some months are better attended than other months. But they definitely understand what we're doing, and a lot of those pastors are, I always say, are included in my fold. Not that I have a fold, but I definitely talk with them. But absolutely, yes, ma'am.
Have you considered approaching the Lions Club or the Rotary?
So I've spoken with Rotary, and the Lions Club. They do. Their direction is a little different than homelessness per se, but I'm going to approach them again and see what they can do for us and see how we can help. You never know when they want someone to talk at their luncheon or something. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
What is the situation of families that are?
So when families come in, we have to split mom and dad up. We have to. because men can't be on the women's floor. It makes it tough when we get in 17-year-old children, because he's actually a male. He's a grown adult. We figure that out. 9 times out of 10, when children are that old, we get a hold of our local shelters and say, listen, can you help us out? We're in a situation. But it doesn't happen that much. It doesn't happen that much, maybe twice last year. Families coming in, that happens a lot. So husbands and wives coming in, husband, wives, children coming in, mom and the kids stay downstairs, dad goes upstairs, everything starts again in the morning. Yes, ma'am.
I just took a tour in Minneapolis. It's called The Bridging,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a factory. My sister-in-law volunteers there, and it was just like a huge area. You've heard of it?
I haven't heard of it, but I've seen very similar things. There's one over in
Where
Aurora,
all the
Illinois.
furniture, like you were talking about, and then the people that are going into apartments, they go and shop. They put their name on couches. I mean, it's huge. Do we have anything like that around here?
We don't have anything like that. The organization would have to pay rent of some kind or own the building, one or the other. And at that point, they own all the overhead, so they're still paying. That's been a rub a little bit. There are storage facilities that have loaned other organizations some space, and they do that on a smaller scale for people in their organization and my organization getting out. But there are other organizations that help people get out. I mean, just because we're the shelter doesn't mean we're the only ones helping people get placed. They could be on the streets and get placed without going through a shelter. So there needs to be a one-stop shop. I agree. Big picture, that would be great. It'd be great if we can get into a community that doesn't have much homelessness, so they can see that they're helping us out and things like that. Where's baby steps? Baby steps. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Not a question, but you are so awesome, and everything that you've done, getting all the people together, and it's we are all in this room amazed at what has been done here in town, and we are so grateful to you. And I know you're going to say, "Oh, I guess me," but you're there right now.
So I always say that listen, I'm not doing this. I'm driving the bus. For years and years and years, I've listened to all the volunteers who've been through the program. Just like here, they all have great ideas, and they all have things that, like, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? How many times did I take food out to cars in the parking lot where women were staying in the cars because there was no women's shelter while the men stayed in a warm place?
Yeah.
That's why we created a women's shelter. How many times were we in churches that the sewers backed up? We had one church that we were in that monthly we were getting the sewer lines rotted. That's $300 we were paying out. Things like that happen. Even here, we had a client who got upset one day and busted a window. We paid for that. This is part of overhead. This is part of operating a business. So to have it in our own place was something that was vital. And the timing of it, truthfully, it may not have seemed that different to you guys, but the pastors can tell you, and the people in the churches who are in the know will tell you that during COVID, it was a scary time having homeless people in the shelter, in the traveling program. And thank God they held on to us as long as they did, because truthfully, any one of them could have said, listen, I got too much to lose. And I would have understood. There's nothing else I can do, So we all worked as a team. Again, you're looking at me, but truthfully, if it wasn't for the churches, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here because there was a pastor who whispered in my ear that Sacred Heart was opening up. Pastor Erica, anytime I called her and said, hey, I have an opening and I need a night tonight, would say, why'd you call me this late? But yes, you can go there. In general, everyone came together. So I appreciate all you guys, truthfully. I need more volunteers. If you guys are interested, volunteer. I cannot take donated food though. And I'm so sorry. I'll tell you the story. Quick funny story. I helped the LaPorte's pads get up and running. Mike and I went over there and did a training with all of their volunteers, and there was 2 sessions, probably about 30 to 70 people each session. And it was wonderful. It was 3 hours of just talking, and Mike and I love to talk. So that was great. They got up and running, and the Board of Health came in and said, you guys can't receive donated food. Well, Michigan City does. Oh, really? Let's call Michigan City. Let's get them on the phone. And they said, no, you can't do that. That was very close to us opening at Sacred Heart. We worked it out. Oh, this is still a church, right? So I can't lie in the church, is that correct? We worked it out and told them that we wouldn't do that anymore. We would only take food from these places. We got through it. It was only like 2 months. So I want to do the right things, but I also want to take care of people. And sometimes you just have to juggle a little bit. You have to turn your back a little bit on things. And just do it.
What do you mean by donated food?
So if it's made in your kitchen, I can't accept it because your kitchen is not approved by the Board of Health.
Oh.
So only approved kitchens, restaurants, soup kitchens, stores, things like that, they can, absolutely, because they get checked out by the Board of Health, and I get checked out just like a restaurant by the Board of Health. You want to look us up?
So if we make it here,
Absolutely, yes, yes. So I have a church, Queen of All Saints, that they have a youth group that like to make us pans of brownies. I said, I can't accept them anymore, I'm so sorry. And then we thought and thought and thought. I said, I'll tell you what, you take a picture of the Board of Health approval in your kitchen every time you're gonna bring these brownies in. So every 2 months, they take a picture. I know brownies are coming in, and we get like 14 pans of brownies. I've got the approval that it was made in this kitchen. I feel I'm good. If the Board of Health wants to take away the brownies, enjoy.
What about package?
Packaged food for sure, because that's made in a store, in a facility. Absolutely, yep. Anything bought at Meijer or Walmart can definitely be dropped
I've
off.
got lots of stuff in my cupboard that I'm not gonna use up in the next month.
That would be wonderful, for sure. Truthfully, I'll take all of it and put it all to good use. Cereal just came to my mind. Cereal is something we use every single day, and all kinds of flavors, because the clients will say, I want the healthy stuff. And then I'm throwing out the healthy stuff because all they wanted was the sugar stuff. Truthfully. So if you guys want to donate cereal, I can use it daily. I can use coffee daily. These are things I use for sure. Paper plates daily. So yeah. Toilet paper daily. Trying to think in my head. Yeah. Any other questions? Well, guys, I appreciate you guys so much. Truthfully, it's been wonderful. It's been a wonderful partnership, and I want to continue that. I want it always to be there. I always said that my biggest fear was if we went and had our own facility, I would lose the churches. And I didn't want to do that. And I was resistant for quite a bit until a local pastor said, you won't lose the churches, you'll keep the core people. So, thank you guys. Thank you.
We have a check for your fundraiser or just operating expenses.
Thank you so much.
And this was given to us by people of our community, our church community, to the men's show.
Wonderful.
So this is one of those.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, guys. Oh, yeah, let's get a picture.
Wait a minute, we need to have a
Still
Sue,
picture.
where's Sue? Susie?
John, could you pass out the flyers?
Yeah.
Yes, I'll pass those out for sure.
In the meantime, I want to tell you that we have some volunteers here, who are people here who have been with the men's shelter since the beginning. And Patty Schaefer, Brock, and Barb. Brock and Barb have been with anybody else who has been from the very beginning. And you. Okay.
Take another picture.
Lori's part of the
And Laura, you are part of the
Lori, you get it.
mission committee also.
Yeah.
I need a picture
Yeah.
on Facebook.
If you would like to use that.
Oh, I have to, every minute.
Lori, don't just, you're gonna have to go
Yeah.
down.
Yeah, you can, I stand above you, yeah, come on in.
Okay, we can do this.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well, thank you guys so much. And truthfully, when I started the women's program, I understood the pain of what Dorothy and Nancy went through. Because I was calling all these churches, trying to get it lined up, like, can we get a second night from you? Can you offer an initial night? And it came down to, we're gonna open the shelter in 2 weeks, and I'm still down 2 churches. We finally got it all lined up, and I told you to remember something. When I opened up the women's shelter on our very first night, we had nobody show up. Our second night, we had a bus pulled up in front of us. The mom and daughter walked off the bus. Totally new to homelessness, had no idea. By the end of the week, between our connections and the community, they were in their own apartments. So it doesn't happen all the time like that. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but truthfully, the community comes together, and we really are we're disconnected services, but we're all here, and we're here to connect them. Thanks, guys.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Judy, for gathering.
Yeah, if anyone would like some more refreshments, please help yourselves. As you know,